Randeep Grewal from Green Dragon Gas is with me on the line this afternoon. Randeep, good afternoon, nice to speak to you.
And to you, Andrew.
You've told investors this week that China National Offshore Oil Corporation's accelerating its plans for your joint assets. Give us a bit of the background here, clearly significant, but how so?
A rather material agreement, as our press release really identifies. It took us about 8 years to conclude these agreements between our partners. We had to quantify and specifically identify the value of the carried interest that Green Dragon has in the 1,139 wells that were drilled by CNOOC's subsidiary CUCBM on our GSS block, which is our flagship block. And when we take a look at that CBM, the coal bed methane block in China, it is by far the largest coal bed methane block with a foreign entity in China. And in this particular press release, we identify that between CNOOC and us, we've got about $940 million invested in the block. With this agreement now, it is clear that on Green Dragon's 60% carried interest in those wells, as well as the 200 wells we've got, which can now proceed on to a robust gas sales and a cost recovery of the monies invested.
As you say, 8 years in the making, you must have breathed a sigh of relief when this came through, Randeep.
Certainly a sigh of relief when we documented it, but during the course of the 8 years, obviously we were very cognizant of the value created and the value realized. I think the benefit of closure always is that the ambiguity in terms of the cost recovery mechanism has now been very well documented through an independent audit between the parties, which took a bit of time. But clearly, successful drilling on the property is really what developing property is all about. So in this case, we've got the wells, they're in place, infrastructure that has been built is being built for almost 50 BCF of production annually from the block. With these agreements behind us, we can now concentrate on the gas sales.
And of course, with the benefit of closure there, before we talk about the other announcement that you had out within the last week or so, of course, with this now to one side, I suppose it opens the door and you can focus on making progress in other areas, like we've spoken about in the past, the Hong Kong IPO, etc.
Exactly correct. The ambiguity around the cost recovery mechanism and the carried interest on such a large asset, 1,139 wells, is rather significant, along with the CUCBM investment of $623 million. Clearly, that had to get concluded before we could proceed on our other material objectives. With this concluded, we can certainly get on with those in a very cooperative and collaborative manner with our partner, CNOOC and CUCBM.
Well, let's return to GCZ. Of course, this week, I think it might have been to the tail end of last week, you received final approval for the development of the block. Another big step forward for you?
It certainly is. I mean, a week ago today, we announced that on our GCZ block, we had received the final project code and ODP approval. So that block now can proceed into full ODP development, which it is already in process of doing. No more hurdles to take that to full development. So we're very pleased that everything's come together quite nicely. A very, very good start of the fall for Green Dragon.
So far with GCZ, you've sunk, 114 wells?
On GCZ, we've got about 114 wells, and our plan is to drill another 147 wells through the end of 2018.
And as far as the development of the block's concerned, what's the thinking as to the funding there?
So between the parties, if you're talking about GCZ, there is approximately just over $50 million. We have a 47% interest. Our partner CNPC has a 53% interest. With the ODP in place, certainly we feel the reserve-based lending group within the different Chinese banks is very much available to us to tap. It's simply without the ODP, that market was closed. So that's what our finance chief is currently working on to execute so we can get on with the program in 2018.
Very exciting, Randeep. Good to speak to you. Thanks very much.
Andrew, thank you for your time.